Okay. All right. Hot mic.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. Hot mic. I just got some Italian lessons off and French on the side. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting show today. We got jam-packed RWA, and it's not the RWA you're thinking about. We're focused on real-world adoption. And we're going to pick up where we were hoping to finalize one video a couple of weeks ago talking about all these exciting utility chains. And today we're going to be focused on 𝗁𝗃𝗀 and 𝗚𝗃𝗀𝗀. And it's pretty exciting. I mean, 𝗁𝗃𝗀 and 𝗚𝗃𝗀𝗀, I don't really think get enough attention and accolade from the wider community. And both are doing some incredible things that we're going to be highlighting today, and why everybody should be focused on that aspect and not necessarily focused on the daily chart, because it's through adoption is where we'll have a translation in the charts. So it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, I think I just did a thread yesterday talking, refuting the idea that there's no fundamentals in crypto, right? And I used one project as an example when we talked about last time with 𝗚𝗵𝗽, but I think that goes for many projects. And there is in my mind, there's a pretty big division in the crypto ecospace of things that are really trying to kind of like work with Web 2 existing companies or create brand new products or disruptive products in Web 3. And then there's just kind of a lot of nonsense. and there's nothing wrong with nonsense. There's nothing wrong with art. There's nothing wrong with, community and kind of community tokens that don't have any underlying value, or NFTs that people buy just for the art. But I think what gets me more excited is, the examples, and we talked about 3 last time, of just real business solutions and really kind of compelling opportunities to leverage digital ledger technology.
No, you're exactly right. It's it's funny because I think 𝗚𝗃𝗀𝗀 Foundation posted a thing about blockchain being the great connector, right? And I think that that's true. I mean, there is something for everybody. Not that there's anything wrong with some of the things that you just talked about, like the meme coins, and a couple cycles ago it was NFTs. And if you just want to focus on the fun, sort of speculative, even gambling sort of aspects, I mean, there's that stuff everywhere, but where actually there's a lot more traction when you think about it is with real world use cases. And I kind of highlighted that the other day, and we lost Rutro. Let me figure out what happened to the co-host here. He rugged. But yeah, I focused on that the other day with the real world adoption, where you had real world tokenized assets actually overtaking DeFi. And I was going to highlight this at a later point, but while I work on getting Chris back on the screen, somehow we'll figure out what happened to Chris. Now that everything got all buggered up with the stream. There's nothing wrong with a couple snafus, though. Oh, here we go, and he's back.
Definitely lost literally everything I had saved. So my computer, like a cord, kind of got a little loose and literally just shut off my computer, and everything I had easily ready to share on my screen, I'm going to have to quickly rebuild. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. So while
anyway, sorry about that.
Nah, it's all right. I mean, it happens. Yeah. Nothing. It's just one of those things. So I'm going to.
Maybe you can. Oh yeah. Why don't you get started on that, and that'll buy me enough time to kind of rebuild some of my graphics here.
So this is what I was talking about here. So the tokenizing of real world assets actually overtook DeFi, and this happened, I believe, in May, and this was a pretty significant deal because I don't think really anybody was focused on this over the past year. I personally have been focused on real world assets and utility tokens, ever since I got into this space. And it's always been this, constant struggle going against the mainstream narrative of whatever is the latest hype. In 2021, everyone was focused on NFTs, and most of these NFTs that people were hyping up and focusing didn't really have much utility focused with them. And then this cycle, everyone's focused on meme tokens, and it's the same thing. I mean, you have all these meme tokens with zero utility attached to them, and people just pumping them up, and anybody can just mint a token, and there's lots of scams and rugs all around. But it can be fun. I mean, because the meme economy is a real thing, and there is definitely value attached to communities in that aspect. But there's this whole undercurrent of real stuff happening that doesn't get a lot of attention. And this year it did rear its head out of the hype, because this was a big deal. Like I said, the first time that tokenized real world assets overtook DeFi, and I think it's by like a lot now. So now you have stable coins, which is a real world asset. So the total value of tokenized stablecoins is currently $170 billion. And I think the total DeFi market is currently around like 110 billion or so. So it's a pretty significant gap here.
Yeah, and look, I think DeFi has a lot of merits. I think, you know, democratizing finance, breaking down barriers that, you know, traditionally have not always matched, you know, appropriate people with loans or other financial resources. That's a really important thing. And so it's not to kind of downplay DeFi. I just think that there's a lot in the Web3 space that is categorized as DeFi and really just doesn't do anything like that, right? It's like Ponzi schemes and, you know, taking advantage of people that maybe aren't as familiar with understanding token supply schedules and that kind of stuff. And so I'm not trying to paint with a broad cloth and say it's all bad. There's some really cool innovation out there, and I think that will eventually, the cream will rise to the top. But I do think that a lot of the DeFi we saw last cycle, for example, you know, like these node guys, like they were clear Ponzi schemes, right? You can't pay, you know, 400% interest in a year, right? And generating, you know, 1/1000th of that in transaction fees for your nodes. And how is that ever going to be sustainable? And I do think, you know, the market has moved past that and is evolving some, but I still think there's a lot of bad actors out there. And it's kind of, you know, what the comment that you hear people say, and I think this rings true, is if you don't know where the yield comes from, you are the yield, right? And so I think that we will see really cool innovation come out of DeFi. I'm all for it, but I'm more excited at the moment by some of this stuff where we're putting real assets on chain. We're seeing real world adoption by existing businesses wanting to use some of these digital ledger technologies, and the size of the opportunity that is there for digital ledgers to either add value and increase revenues, save costs, add transparency, add efficiency to improve margins, that potential is just so enormous that anyone that's too busy, you know, fighting that everything needs to be built on project A or everything needs to be built on project B is missing just how big this pie is and how big that pie can grow through time as we see more and more adoption of digital ledger technologies. So that's why I'm more excited about kind of what you're talking about. And you're seeing the market move that way. As you point out, it's now already bigger than DeFi and it's growing much faster. And so that's really an exciting thing.
Yeah. I don't know if you have your stuff up.
I am about ready now. I don't know if I have all of it. I have most of it. Let me share my screen. It's going to do the crazy tunnel really quick, and then I'll start off with checked.
Okay.
So I want to share my. So let me do that. So am I sharing right now? You can see that.
When you have it, there we go. Oh, there we go. All right.
All right. So, like, first, I just want to try to keep some consistency of the conversation last time. I think we stopped, 5 minutes into check. We had, the pleasure of, Morpheus Network having someone kind of drop in the conversation, and that was awesome. We learned a lot of really cool things. But I think we'll just probably start at the top for check. Probably the best thing to do just to keep continuity. And so I want to take that same approach, kind of talking about the total addressable market, kind of the high level supply, and then kind of go into what is Check Network doing. Obviously, we're going to kind of talk about where are some opportunities for them to maybe consider using Constellation as a partner or areas where there could be some collaboration. So first and foremost, Check is a digital identity infrastructure provider is the way I would put it. So when you kind of think about, and I know Dagman's great about this, just trying to bring more attention to just how our current institutions and honeypot databases continue to just see breaches. The disclosure around those breaches is terrible. I think we have to basically assume at this point every US citizen has their social security number compromised, probably a good part of your medical records, certainly probably all your financial history. So is there a better way to go about this? And that's really one of the things that digital identity aims to solve. So what it really does is it brings your credentials into kind of like offline databases that aren't easily accessible. And then through zero knowledge proofs, it allows people on chain to check and verify you are who you say you are, or you have the credentials you say you do. And so think about that. Like, how many times have we read stories where someone's faked an identity, or this person that has been successful for 20 years, it turns out they never went to Harvard, they never got that MBA from University of Chicago, and they never ran that hedge fund successfully for 10 years, but now they've been managing the pension board's endowment for like the last 15 years. There's crazy examples of this, and we can actually eliminate a lot of those types of problems, whether it's data just effectively getting stolen or scraped by like the most recent issue we had, or where we can kind of verify people's credentials. Not only are they who they say they are, but they've actually accomplished what they said they've accomplished, or earned certifications in what they said they've earned certifications in. And so that's really kind of at the high level what Check does. Look, their supply at the moment is 1.15 billion. Check has kind of a different tokenomics than I think a lot of projects that, let me see if here we go. Sorry. Then a lot of projects we've kind of talked about. I think a lot of things in the crypto space have like a set total number of tokens, and that's a good model. It just kind of depends on tokenomics should ultimately aid the project and the protocol in achieving what they need to achieve. And so when I kind of think about Check, 1 billion is a pretty big supply for something that's not like a layer 0. And what they've decided to do is effectively mint supply to pay for validators and to keep the network secure. But then over time, and this is what I have up on the screen now, you can see that supply was the emissions or the inflation rate of that supply was really kind of aggressive the first 2 years. So Check came out 3 years ago. So we're now well into this year 2 to 3. And so this is something that Check investors had kind of been talking about, is this is a big inflection in emission rate of supply. And so what you'll see is that really you've taken a lot of the supply growth already in this ecosystem. And now that supply growth is going to start to wane, and they'll always have, an inflationary rate. But one of the things that makes Check cool, and this is something Check is within the Cosmos ecosystem, it's pretty common in the Cosmos ecosystem. It's a model where they will have emissions, and then they will burn Check tokens based on fees, for use of their network. So if that's creating a new digital identity or a new digital credential, checking that credential, updating that credential, maybe Dagnum's digital driver license, needs to be updated for that reckless driving. He's doing some racing on the weekends. All of that would cost, Check, and it would effectively burn Check. And so the idea is you're using use of the network to regulate the supply. And so that becomes pretty powerful. And we obviously know Constellation has recently announced a similar type of mechanism here, with an inflationary schedule that decreases through time, and then having metagraph snapshots or use of the network burn DAG, right? And so it's a similar type of model. And what this type of model does for you is it allows you to have a lot of emissions in the beginning, so you can have capital to kind of grow your network. And then through time, it should become more of a predictable and potentially stable, and then through time, maybe even deflationary supply. So I thought that was pretty cool, that this is a model that Check has had, since inception. It's a model we see in the Cosmos ecosystem with things like injective protocol. Almost everyone in the Cosmos ecosystem uses this. We've obviously seen that Constellation has kind of switched to a similar type of model. They've obviously tweaked it, with the delegation mechanism and some other things there that
I
we
really
can talk about
love
more at the end.
Cosmos.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say I'd love Cosmos. I'd love to do like a dive into that because they're a modular network, and it's these modular networks that I think that are going to be the key driving factor moving forward.
Yeah,
Cosmos,
there's some people that are diehard Cosmos, and I think it's a cool model. To be fair, I need to spend more time on it and really understand it better. But it seems to be that it's not a coincidence to me, I would say, that you see some very strong projects building on this platform and this modular model. And so one of the really cool things about Web3, and it kind of goes back to that comment I was making at the outset before I abruptly dropped off or whatever, it's just we don't need everything on one blockchain. The future is having different models, right? That might be attractive to business, different protocol ideas or business opportunities or what have you. And the key is to make these things interoperable so they can talk to each other. Give people the choice, give businesses the choice to use what works for them, whether frankly it's a private network that then interoperates with public networks like Constellation, or like Cosmos or Checked or Algorand, or it's being able to have that choice of, I want to build on Constellation because of the horizontal scalability, because I trust the Department of Defense saying it's secure. I want to build on Algorand because they're using quantum proof signatures, right, with their Falcon signature technology. I like the idea with Algorand that there is a fixed supply at 10 billion and we're 80% of the way there roughly. Like you can do much better by giving people these choices. And so I think it's important. We see we used to see, I think it's starting to wane a little bit in like the crypto Twitter sphere and the crypto communities of like, X is better than Y or A is better than B, and that's a stupid model. And I think the reality just becomes choice, supersedes perfect models. Giving people the choice and allowing all these systems to communicate together is a much better outcome to grow the adoption of the industry as a whole. But I do think this is a cool kind of thing to point out, knowing the path that Constellation just decided to take. To try to, really, increase the growth of the network, to ramp up the metagraphs, if you will. So we can see that this is something that Check, it chose specifically kind of for similar reasons. So listen, Dagnum, you know me, I'm long-winded, so I can just keep going. At any point, just interject with any ideas you have. But so to kind of keep the kind of same framework we were using, right? We'll talk supply. What else do we look at new projects, or what else do I look at? Well, with Checked, I just want to bring up really quick, here's their total addressable market, right? Look, I just pulled this. It took me 2 seconds in a Google search. All you have to do is search things like, digital identity total market. This is somebody trying to sell me a report, right? Buy our report. But look at what there is right at the top. This is the whole market. And like what you would see is, it's like a well over $100 billion opportunity by 2030. So today it's 27 billion. It's going to well over 130. I think it says somewhere down there further, and it's going to be a compound average growth rate. So that's how fast it will compound the market as a whole at 17%. So you can just see that it's an incredibly compelling market size. And so you start to think about, okay, the whole market is, 100 billion. If Check in theory can get 1% of that, now you're talking a Check token that's in the dollars, right? That's the simple math. That's the simple kind of quick analysis you can do for things to at least size up the opportunity. What you don't want to see is something that is already worth billions of dollars and the total addressable market is only a few $1 billion, right? Then you might have a problem, and you might have to say, is this market going to grow very aggressively in the future to justify that? Or is the crypto market kind of overpricing, how much this protocol can take of that existing market? They're not going to take, it's not realistic to assume a Web3 startup is going to come and take 80, 90% of the market share within a couple of years. So just something people, I think, need to be aware of. The other thing we kind of talked about, right, was the team. And, you know, what I would tell you, Frazier CEO, Anchor CTO, we'll stop there. No disservice to anyone. And I know Alex Tweedale just got a shout out on something we're going to talk about that got announced today. I checked in a little bit. You know, Frazier was working on digital identity at Accenture. He ran into Anchor, who was doing the same thing. Anchor actually spent a little bit of time at R3. If you're not familiar, R3 is who makes 𝗂𝗲𝗀. 𝗂𝗲𝗀 is a private digital ledger technology or blockchain technology that is really, at the moment, kind of got a stranglehold on financial blockchain deployments, right? So they're probably the biggest player in the financial space for blockchains or for digital ledger technologies at the moment. You know, people are suspecting they'll be highly involved in CBDCs, and a lot of like bank entity, at least initial digital ledger deployments will probably be R3 𝗂𝗲𝗀 and then interoperate to public ledgers. Maybe that changes in time, but R3 is a powerhouse, and so you have a CTO who did identity, tech at Accenture, coming from R3. This is the kind of stuff you want to see. As I say simply, like, it's not a 19-year-old in the basement. Again, I will say some of those 19-year-olds in the basement will become the next Bill Gates, Michael Dell, whoever. But investing should be thought of as nobody knows the future. It's maximizing your probabilities, going with people that already are involved in the industry, have experience with powerhouse companies. It just gives you a higher probability of success, because somebody like a Frazier Edwards can sit down and, command a room of people already working in this space in a way that, somebody who just is a savant and doesn't have industry connections cannot. Somebody like a Frazier can use those connections they made at an Accenture, to get in the room, to have the meetings, to get on board from customers. So that's a really powerful thing. And so what 𝗁𝗃 really does is, and what makes them unique is from where I sit, two approaches. One, they have kind of built payment rails into their digital identity infrastructure solution. And to my knowledge, they're the only one that has done this. And that comes directly from Frazier's experience at Accenture, where they were coming up with digital identity solutions, and they were having trouble getting people to adopt it because there was not the economic incentive of payment rails to get people on board. Well, yeah, I have this data. Yeah, we could digitize it in this secure way, but if we can't make money off of it, why am I going to go through that effort? Or if you, the individual, right? Oh, well, they're doing a study on, people that are my age range and yada, yada, yada. And I could give them, some of my information anonymously that they could put into that study and use. But why am I going to go through that trouble for nothing? No, if they're going to pay me, $10 to be a part of this study, and I know that I'm using a distributed ledger technology with zero knowledge proofs that my information is safe, and I'm only going to actually share, the data of maybe my age, where I live, income bracket, whatever it might be, that they need for this study, and they're not going to know things like my full name, my mother's maiden name, my address, so on and so forth. All of a sudden, it's kind of like filling out those online surveys. Like, you can make $5, $10 here and there. Imagine you could just set that up in a digital ledger network where you're open to these types of things. You have to be kept anonymous. You could just monetize your data and your identity, or aspects of your identity or characteristics of your identity, in a regular fashion without really having to do much. That's pretty powerful. And it's a high incentive to get people to kind of buy into this system. And so if you get people to do it, you have companies that want to use that data or provide their data themselves. Right now, you're starting to see that it creates this microeconomy, where everyone involved in that network, whether you're the people that need the data to do studies or to run statistics, or companies or individuals that can kind of provide pieces of data and have a surety that you'll have confidentiality, that's pretty powerful. And then there's the obvious use cases of things like why are we waiting in lines at the DMV when this can all be done digitally? Why, you know, you don't have to worry about losing your license if it's, you know, on your phone and things of that nature. And so it's really interesting. This is going to be a very big space, obviously hundreds of billions of dollars. The EU actually is mandating through IEDAS that by 2026, EU member countries are going to have to take part in digital identity platforms. So Europe's effectively mandating that their member states kind of move in the digital identity direction and away from kind of paper and historical solutions. And here you have it. 𝗁𝗃 is actually in the EU digital identity sandbox. So I had a pull up of that, but I mean, I could Google it really quick here. But what you need to understand,
and I think
is that's
some of that. I made a post about this in the United States. There's an executive order that's draft. It's already sitting on Biden's desk for mandating digital IDs. So like that stuff is absolutely happening. Even here in the U.S., there's something like 13 or 14 states that have digital IDs. So your driver's license is, you know, literally sitting on your phone. The only missing component of that is adding a secure blockchain piece to that. But digital IDs are absolutely going to be mandated.
Yeah, and I think 𝗁𝗃's platform that gets me really excited because, one, like digital IDs becoming a better solution than the current system is obvious. But then you kind of ask yourself, well, okay, but is the entire world's digital identity solution going to all run through 𝗁𝗃? Well, no, it's not. I mean, like, probably not, right? We don't, not everybody uses Windows. Not everybody uses Linux. Not everybody uses Mac. Like, there's reasons people use those different systems, right? It depends on their use case and what makes the most sense. Maybe some countries, like hypothetically, like a China, doesn't want to use, you know, 𝗁𝗃 network because it's a Western-based, you know, London-based company. Maybe that for them is too much of a security risk, right? Even though it's decentralized and transparent, that I can see that's not something that sounds crazy to me. And so what becomes important? Well, that same interoperability principle we had been talking about before with just networks like Algorand and Constellation and Bitcoin and Ethereum and R3 which is private, or Hyperledger, which is private. Like, these things all need to talk to each other, whether they're public, private, you know, the perfect model of decentralized or maybe more centralized, you know, like a Binance chain. And so it doesn't matter. These things all need to work together. And so one thing I certainly wanted to highlight, and it gets me excited about what 𝗁𝗃 is doing, you know, outside of the EU thing, which I think is huge, and we can't understate that, is 𝗁𝗃's approach to this marketplace and their foresight. And this probably comes from Fraser and other, you know, founders' experience, knowing that, look, not everything's going to build on us, but if we can become compatible with most of the digital or self-sovereign identity solutions out there, well, then it'll just come down to, can we do it for cheaper? Can we do it safer? Can we do it faster, right? More efficient. And so as you see here, I mean, I just use this tweet because it captures a lot of the points I wanted to make in one spot. But 𝗁𝗃 is actually compatible with 70% of the SSI, which stands for self-sovereign identity, application vendors out there in existence. So they're already compatible with 70 of the solutions, right? Some of their competitors in this marketplace have really good technology, but are taking that approach of like having the walled garden, right? Where everyone's going to just build on our platform. And so everyone's going to have to use us. And look, that's a great business model if you can get a monopoly. But when new industries like this are born and being formed, it's really hard to be Google, right? Day one. What makes more sense is to actually just say, look, like, you can use our infrastructure on as many platforms as possible. That gives us the best percentage chance that when something is done in the digital identity or self-sovereign identity space, that like we can be the winning choice, right? And so what does that do? Well, it drives more volume to the 𝗁𝗃 network, which then burns more 𝗁𝗃 tokens, which then gets you in a situation where people staking on the network to those validators, which is the Cosmos model. And maybe I need to be clear about that. The Cosmos model, like I said before, validators are paid by that inflation. Token holders can effectively delegate to a validator, which means stake your tokens to a specific validator and earn some return for doing that. And so that ties up, the supply, which effectively means there's less available supply for people to buy, right? So it helps it's a mechanism to help the network, the token price reflect the network growth, right? But what that means is, the inflationary rate that's paying validators can be potentially completely offset or even overrun by token burns. And then you're in a situation where you're still getting paid rewards as a staker or a validator. And, there's the tokens actually becoming more scarce because the network use is burning more tokens than are in the inflation schedule. So really cool approach. And this is something that when I found it out, got me really excited about Checked, is like having the foresight to make interoperability a core part of their strategy, and having the awareness and being humble enough to kind of realize that this is probably the best approach for us to win overall, even if we can't possibly win 100% market share. So that's like a really mature way to look at it. And so that resonates with me. Another thing in this tweet I wanted to talk about, and we're going fast through Checked here, but there's a lot to talk about, is this verified AI use case. And this is really cool too. So when you think about what Checked has created, it's a platform with payment rails and also a verification of data, right? Whether that's individual identification data, whether that's legitimacy of the data, right? Did the data come from where it was supposed to come from? Whether that's characteristics of the data, like the driver's license is expired or not expired, right? Well, that becomes really important for AI. When you kind of think about this, and we talked about this, Dagnam, on another space, and I think I had mentioned this, but like, if we're going to be in a world in 5 to 10 years, maybe sooner, I'm not smart enough to know, where AI is going to be a bigger and bigger part of our global economy, effectively economic agents, right? So if you think of people as like economic agents, whether they're workers, what have you, in the economy, more and more through time of the economy is going to be, AI making decisions, buying things, selling things, ordering for a business, selling product, trading in markets, what have you. You want to make really sure that the data you're feeding that algorithm is the data you think it is, and it hasn't been tampered with by one of your competitors. And you want to make sure that the algorithm itself hasn't been tampered with. You want to make sure the output of that algorithm is what it says it's supposed to be. And so now when we think about where does Checked, potentially fit in that solution, it's really like making sure that that data in is what it's supposed to be, and then, making sure that it ends up where it's supposed to go. And so obviously like Constellation could certainly be a solution for part of that as well. Maybe the pipes, right? Like Constellation, if that data is initiated by an IoT device or a sensor or something like that, Constellation's a perfect solution. Like we know that with what they've done with the door sensor, but maybe that information originates in a database. Well, then in that situation, maybe Checked is a better initial verification of the data. And then it could jump into like a Hyperledger pipe to ensure it's not messed with on the way to the algorithm, right? And then you would need some type of proof of, a kind of like a proof of computation, if you will, which really neither Checked or, to my knowledge, neither Checked or Constellation is able to quite do at this moment. Then it would again go into like a Hyperledger kind of like data pipe that's secure, and then end up at either the user or the the output being an action in the economy, or the output being a report for a human to make a decision. And so this is a really cool use case. I think there's a lot of people who are starting to recognize the importance of, it's like the saying, crap in, crap out. The importance is the data is actually probably the most valuable component of that kind of AI workflow, because through time, algorithms are probably the difference between algorithm A and algorithm B. That gap is probably going to narrow, right? If you just think like OpenAI is ahead, but other people are spending, billions on compute, and if their algorithms are written well, in time, like they will tweak it to get better and better results. And so if the algorithms are going to give you similar solutions for the same data, then what actually becomes incredibly valuable is unique data, right? It's not just information you scraped off of Twitter or Google search. It's actual, sensor-driven data from the real world that, Constellation provides, or it's unique private databases that somebody utilizing Check Network, is willing to share for a price. And so that's the kind of future I see with AI. And so I think Checked recognizing this early, and I think other people are beginning to recognize this, and you're going to hear more and more projects talk about it, because blockchain is such a good data security and digital ledger technology, such good data security and data audit mechanism. But
so I just pulled up the 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝘁 thing just to highlight
go for it.
That this actually could be a thing on the public network, right? And to tie in how Checked could possibly be a solution to that, I'm going to go back to what I mentioned earlier, where the states here in the United States, so we already know Checked is like adopted and approved in Europe, but the states in the US are already beginning to adopt digital driver's licenses. And an executive order is just sitting on Biden's desk, waiting to be signed, to mandate this like on a federal level. So switching back to this 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝘁 example here. So as part of 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝘁, there is a company that has digital access management, similar to what Checked does, but this is strictly on a federal and DoD service, right? And then as you can see here, how Constellation plays into it is they just validate all the underlying data. But these are all like different companies that are, working with and a part of 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝘁. So on a public ledger and on a public network, this could potentially work, where you could have a company that builds a metagraph, that issues, it could even be like a state, right? So like the state of Texas could have their Department of Motor Vehicles run a metagraph, and as part of their ID verification, they could, potentially have Checked as the solution, right? And then you could have all the underlying data being validated on Constellation's network, just like how you have here, how they have it laid out with 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝘁. So that, is absolutely a possibility that somebody could deploy.
Yeah, and how cool would it be if those two systems in some way could communicate? Like, you have a valid driver's license, and oh yes, you do have this security clearance, like you can come on base, right? Like there's, maybe that's not the best example of where, those things would necessarily need to kind of interoperate, but that's the kind of potential here, is like, it doesn't all have to be checked across the entire universe, but if these things can then, use a type of standard kind of credentialing that, systems could use both of them, right? That is pretty powerful. And so that's really cool. And then maybe, in other parts of the world, like you said, Checked is being adopted in Europe, like maybe in Asia, they're using a different system. Well, it would be neat if those two systems could, accept credentials from each other. And so this is the kind of, power you have, where with understanding that, collaboration is more powerful in these instances than, trying to kind of like win the world on one solution fits all. But what it also shows you is that this is needed by, let me switch, sorry. This is needed by, there we go. This is needed by different parts, right? The kind of the government needs this, the state needs this, credentials for things like, work, like the LinkedIn credentials people use now that are not probably really secure and faked and things like that, could use this. There's a lot of different applications across many different sectors. So we've kind of covered a lot with Check. There's just one or two more things I want to say. This one actually ties into Constellation in my mind as well. I'm going to skip to this, but Check kind of doing things in different directions because they've kind of realized some of the power of the platform they built and different ways it can be utilized. This is a really creative product that I love, but Check came out with this thing called Creds, and it's effectively a way for someone to be able to, digitize their reputation on a platform. So look, people that know me and follow me on like Twitter, right? I tend to write like threads most of the time on different projects, right? Or on Telegram, right? I'm pretty active there. People might know me and know my reputation, right? Well, what if I wanted to move to a different platform like TikTok, or I wanted to move to, be more active in Discord and that's a direction I have been going, but even more so than I have. It would be great, to know that I'm a reputable community member in different communities as I join a new social ecosystem. Well, that's actually what Creds can do. It can help, a Web3 platform or even any company kind of manage credentials for social platforms. So you, the user, can kind of build up your reputation on, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever, port it to X, port it to Telegram. That's really cool, right? And it would also immediately get rid of this problem we have in Telegram and on X all the time of like the imposter, right? The whole like X pay $10 a month and it's going to get rid of the fake accounts. Well, the fake accounts just pay $10 a month and they scam people for more than $10 a month, so they don't care. Well, if you could, verify somebody's identity on a social platform irrefutably, like it becomes a lot harder for people to get scammed because you could, issue credentials to your Telegram members or like Dagnum's Telegram channel. Like you could be issued a credential by Dagnum and that says like only people with this credential are allowed into this chat, right? That's really cool. So it solves a couple of problems. It solves like social reputation becomes portable, which is really cool because, who knows what the next social platforms of the next 5 or 10 years are going to be. If you spend all your time on X now or Telegram, maybe using something completely different in 2 or 3 years. And unless you use the exact same handle and people trust that it's you, which in today's day and age is a kind of a leap, you have to ask yourself, like, is there a way I can port that credibility I've built up over time by answering questions, being a good community member, whatever it might be? That's really cool. And so I'm hoping that this gets taken up by more Web3 companies because I know that like the fraud in Web3 and like tricking people, oh, it's the founder of this crypto program and he just needs me to send him 10 Ethereum, right? Like this kind of nonsense happens a lot. But also I wanted to bring it up. One last comment before I tie in Constellation. This is now fully live. And so they had been working on this. But at this point they were in beta for a while and now you can actually pay and start using this. So you can get a free trial, right? But ultimately it doesn't have pricing on here. Sorry, I thought that would have pricing. But you can, on this website, you can find out the pricing and it depends like how many community members you're going to have that you're going to be issuing these credentials. It's a really cool thing, and I'm glad it's like fully live and people are actually paying to use this. But also, it's something where like maybe Dagnum could say, hey, look, like I'm looking at my statistics on Telegram, and like these 5 people are really like doing the most messages. They're the most active. Like they're the most valuable members of my community. Like you could issue Dagnum's MVPs. Right. And it's like a digital credential that like you could issue and you could give to people, or if they like stop coming on your Telegram, maybe you can take it away. And so that's really cool. But what goes in my mind where this becomes insanely cool is we all know that Constellation is, playing around with the like tweet the, the hashtag or the the DAG handle, right, and potentially win social reputation in the Constellation community through things like the 𝗚𝘵𝗃 token. Well, that's really cool too. And so in my mind, I thought there's like ways that like if Constellation's building this way to like effectively like automatically issue reputation, and Creds maybe is doing that in a different way, but with like more versatility. Like, could there be some collaboration there where, you know, you can, you know, tweet something and you get issued an NFT on Constellation, which then triggers a credential on Creds? I don't know, but that's like really cool. It seems like they're both realizing the power of community and maybe starting from slightly different points. But I would love for Constellation and Check to kind of, you know, maybe just have a conversation on, could these two systems, does it make sense for them to kind of speak to each other? You know, could Check make a metagraph, right? That then can leverage some of this technology Constellation's building that incorporates easily with X. And then they could link that metagraph to their own credentials or the Creds platform. So I'll stop there. That's a lot, but that was something I specifically thought about when I saw where Constellation was going more recently with the 𝗚𝘵𝗃.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of different ways that people could apply this technology, and in a way that you know, both parties benefit. You know, we have Intrana working with Quant. You know, so that's one metagraph, one business that's actually incorporating two different blockchains. And so there's no reason why you couldn't have some sort of integration with Checked. And so, you know, we'll just have to see. Maybe somebody's doing it right now in the hackathon.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to talk on Checked before we maybe go to, I got to find it, sorry. Before we maybe go on to Algorand, if that's okay. This actually is hot off the press today. You can see September 2nd. So I haven't had a lot of time to think about this, but Check just announced kind of a merger with a credential service called Doc. And look, I'm not going to try to sit here and speak super intelligently on this because I'm not super familiar with Doc, but what it amounts to, the like quick TLDR is Check. This is checked on their website. Doc had a similar announcement on theirs, but they think that, you know, incorporating Doc into the Checked infrastructure could bring roughly 300% more traffic on their mainnet and 50% more on their test net. So, I mean, when we kind of think about what does that traffic mean, right? Well, it means more Checked is burned. So that's like a very powerful thing, you know, a 3x. And that's, you know, kind of, who knows where that could go in time, right? And it sounds like, based on this exchange ratio and what they say here, in order to kind of do this merger, Checked is going to have to mint, we'll just call it 53 million new Checked tokens. Well, we talked about the total supply at the moment is like 1.15 billion. And I think circulating is, if this number's right, you can never trust these guys, but CoinGecko is better than CoinMarketCap, but it's always, this looks like it's probably pretty close to right, 745. So, I mean, when you think about that, this is like an 8%, let's call it inflation or dilution, so to speak, hypothetically. But with that, you're getting 300% more network activity. So look, I'm not going to try to pretend I wrapped my head around this fully. This just came out today, but just the high level sounds like it's a pretty damn good deal. And so that's really interesting. And so I'll spend some more time looking at this, and maybe I'll tweet about it or we'll talk about it at a later date. But that just came out today. That's really cool. And it sounds like it's going to bring a lot of activity to the Check network.
Yeah. I mean, and it's stuff like this that, you know, needs to get more attention, because once you start peeling back the layers of the onion, right, and seeing what's going on, you know, and investigate it, then that's when you learn about all these cool things, right? Like the other day, I made an observation that the TVL, especially with stable coins on Algorand, which we're going to be discussing now, went up. And so then that just made me investigate like what's going on, right? And a lot of this goes back to the topic at hand, real world adoption. And there's things happening on Algorand right now. They've got like Lofty, where you can get where you can earn revenue from like buying in on homes and rental properties. They got TravelX, which I'm going to get into, and even Whole-chain. They also have a thing with MasterCard that they're piloting in Australia, I believe, where you're utilizing the chain itself for transactions, which is pretty mind-blowing. And so, you know, it's stuff like this real world adoption of real world assets that doesn't really get enough attention and accolade that I think people should be focusing on. And the other thing that's important to highlight, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, is you know, trusting the network that is building all of this stuff. And it all comes down to the people involved, right? Because that's essentially, it's all about trust. And so the founder of Algorand, this I'm probably going to butcher his name, but 𝗂𝘵𝗵𝗀𝗁. I mean, this dude is, you know, next level genius. You know, he's worked at, I think he's still a professor at MIT. He's got something like 47 patents to his name. And, you know, he is one of the co-inventors of zero-knowledge proofs. You know, that's something that everybody is talking about now, right? Even Checked uses zero-knowledge proofs, right? And so this guy, Algorand, like, he's the one who invented it. And, you know, if you go to some of his patents, I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing. I'm not going to go through all 47 patents to his name. But if you just look at one of his patents, and what's really interesting to me is look at who's citing his patent. And that sort of gives you the, you know, the indication of not only who else is interested in and actually potentially using blockchain, but there's also possible partnerships. So look, you got Microsoft here, and how they're doing it is this leaderless Byzantine consensus, which is pretty funny to me because over the past couple of years, you know, I gotten a couple of heated debates about, you know, but are you a BFT? You know, there's one here from MIT, which isn't really surprising because he's a professor at MIT. But oh, hey, look right here. What is this? This is Visa. So Visa cited his work. Sony cited his work. You know, there was another one here with, I'll see if I can find it. Panasonic. I brought this up. I made a post about it. Oh yeah, here we go. Panasonic. So Panasonic cited his work for an electronic voting system. So it's these types of things that should really get people to look at seriously on what's going on. And it's not a surprise that you have people like Panasonic, IBM, Microsoft doing things with this guy and this technology. And look, we were even talking about post-quantum technology. Well, Algorand is actually a part of this, and they've actually used this already. And this NIST has already tested this. So when you're talking about post-quantum cryptography, like Algorand has the technology that can secure the future. I mean, this is already proved. His work has been cited by hundreds of different people, companies, but this all goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This growth in real world asset tokenization, and it's really taking off. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me that I discovered was one of that 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏, right? So let me
hey, Dagnum, can I jump in for a second here?
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, I'll be as quick as I can, which is never quick, but just to kind of be consistent with how we talked about check, right? So like Algorand, and I think you bringing up Silvio is exactly, I was going to make that point too. I think he's a Turing Award winner. If you're not familiar with who Alan Turing is, he basically like decrypted the Nazis in World War II and is like the modern father of how our computers work. But so you mentioned the post quantum, like that Falcon thing. They're signing, blockchain signatures in a post quantum way, which is like mind boggling, right? There's very few protocols that are there already, right, where they're already quantum secure. But let's just so we mentioned like the founder and investing with people who know what they're doing. Algorand, if you want to let me share my screen for a second, right? Different model than like a checked or what Constellation has moved to with the delegation and kind of token elasticity model is probably how they would want me to describe it. Algorand, 10 billion supply, had 10 billion supply the whole time. It's not going to change beyond that. That sounds like a big number, but what that really allows them to do, right, is to have the funding to build the platform that they wanted to, knowing like they needed to be post-quantum, knowing that they needed the throughput of their distributed ledger to be high. And they recently upgraded, I think within the past year, they now can do 10,000 transactions per second. If you're not sure what that means, that's about 864 million transactions a day Algorand can currently handle with their upgrade that they did. And so I won't talk about a total addressable market or a TAM with something like Algorand or Constellation, because it's, unlike something like a Morpheus, a checked, or an Alchemy, where it's pretty clear, like this is the market they're going after. When you start to talk about,
it could be like anything, right? I mean, that's why I was.
That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah, it's like there's the numbers start to get stupid. So what it really becomes about is like building the best platform that has the characteristics and the attributes that people want to build on. And so, the total addressable market could be trillions, but it just sounds
could be anything. And that's why I was just going to focus on one, and I was just going to focus on the 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏. I mean, because we could do a whole space on Algorand. Like, what is the total addressable market for a chain that you could build applications for almost anything, right? So they not only do they have 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏, but they have whole chain, they have Lofty. I mean,
they're working with the Bank of Italy, right?
They're working with the Bank of Italy. They're also tokenizing gold. But to get back to this quantum stuff, I mean, look, so they have peer-reviewed papers, which again absolutely means something to all these enterprise people. You're not going to get in the room and have a conversation with somebody like Microsoft or somebody like Amazon or whoever if you're just Bob's blockchain, right? It's just not going to happen. And so here's all their peer-reviewed publications, and down here I think it was somewhere over here where they have the post quantum proofs, right? So like there's no doubt that this chain has the technology for the future. But to get back to the travel thing, so the total holy buckets. This
You
is
just got to
this
X
is
out of
one
that,
of,
I think. Top right corner.
yeah, this is one of those spammy
See the
sites.
X? If
Um,
you see the gray X right there near the top right. There, right? I want to control your
yeah.
mouse so bad right now. There it is.
Oh, there it
Just
is. Right. Okay. Well, so I've got this actually on another screen, and it's hard to see that. But yeah, so just in the United States, the U.S. travel market, is $1 billion industry. So, and when we're talking about the global market size here of the travel industry, we're talking trillions, and that's current. And so this company 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝘂 that's on Algorand right now is allowing people to do smart buybacks and peer-to-peer ticket exchange, right? And so if you don't think that there's actually a market for this, you're actually wrong, because there's traditional businesses are actually already doing similar stuff to this. So I'm going to point out this deal from Alaskan Airlines, and they're not the only company that's doing this unlimited flight pass. So going back to 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝘂. Now, I don't know if this is actually possible. So this is maybe an idea for them to implement, or maybe somebody else. But this is just going over the potential here of something similar that's happening right now, and it's big business. So what you can do with these unlimited flight passes is you buy up in bulk, right? So if you're going to be flying a lot, like let's say you're in business, or you plan to do a lot of travels over the holiday, you get these passes, right? So here, look, 6 trips per year, and it's only going to cost you, $49 a month to fly. So if you actually booked a trip right now, some of these seats are in the hundreds of dollars. And so how this is actually achieved is on the back end, there's another company, this company that buys up all the tickets for the airlines. They buy them in bulk, and that's how they get such a good deal on them. And then what they do to you is they offer you like a pass, like a season pass. So what you could potentially do with 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝘂, now maybe this is possible. I'm still fairly new to the Algorand ecosystem, but you see, like right here, this smart flight swap. So potentially what you could do is you could buy up a bunch of tickets. You can go on to airlines right now and look at the flexible ticket dates. You could see, generally speaking, with travel, I do a lot of traveling. Generally, the cheapest days to travel are on Tuesdays. So if you look at flexible dates, you can see where the lowest rates for tickets are. And potentially what you could do here with this 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝘂 is just buy up a bunch of tickets super cheap, and then sell them to people. So yeah, so this is an incredible opportunity, and this is just one company that's tokenizing real world assets on blockchain right now with Algorand. There's several companies that are doing amazing things, like this whole chain that I briefly talked about just a minute ago. So they're a supply chain, and so how this could translate. The other day in the news, we had what was it? Boar,
Boar's Head.
Boar's Head. They had this outbreak, and some people, actually, I think some people died to it. But this is happening right now. So from this farm to table, like, this isn't in the future. This is live right now on Algorand. So this could be implemented on a much wider approach, and this could actually potentially save lives. I mean, you could have everybody be notified that bought, that piece of contaminated meat, because it would know right away that that you bought it. The other thing that it could do is it could prevent that from even happening, because you would know that the place that you bought your meat from was verified safe. And the only way to get a verified safe credential is for them to have inspections that pass. And I think that's part of I think that's what happened with Boar's Head, is they were pretty shady with their inspections. And so you could have verified inspections done on chain. So the whole thing from farm to table would be verified. So you would know with absolute certainty that whatever you bought was safe.
Yeah, and I think, like, just stepping back, we could spend another 2 hours going through all the cool stuff being built on Algorand. I think something we didn't even mention is they have, the ability to stake your tokens from your own wallet. That's pretty cool. Like, it's these kind of innovations that are really neat. But just even a further step back, Algorand to me is like a really good example of a blockchain that, instead of trying to be like an Ethereum killer, right? Do you want to be an Ethereum killer where, like, when we think back to like last cycle, right? It was a new projects were being launched on Ethereum every day, right? And it was a bunch were scams, and there was just like NFT art flooding the market. And I'm not trying to talk bad about NFT art, but just a lot of stuff that, generally speaking, wasn't adding a ton of value, right? Like, not legitimate artists just putting out the same kind of nonsense. And so people tried to be like, I want to be the next Ethereum where all this stuff gets built on me, Solana. Or you can try to build a blockchain or a distributed ledger technology that tries to solve real world problems, has the characteristics to, really move things forward with, like, being quantum proof, with being scalable to 10,000 transactions a second, with allowing staking from an individual's wallet. Like, these types of attributes, Algorand wasn't trying to be an Ethereum killer. They were trying to be a blockchain to enable mass adoption, right? And I think Constellation is similar in that way, where Constellation could have built an Ethereum clone with some better characteristics, with newer technology, in probably a few years, right? But instead, they're, like Algorand, trying to bring characteristics and attributes of their platform, like feeless peer-to-peer transactions, like being quantum proof, like having buy-in from things like the Department of Defense, right? Like horizontal scalability of transactions, like these types of forward-thinking platforms, maybe weren't getting as much credit as they should have deserved the last few years, because they weren't getting the flashy new Web3 projects that many are dying now built on them. But they're going to get more and more adoption by, like, the real businesses, by the real Web3 projects that are solving problems. And so I really like Algorand. I'm excited about what I've read on them. I need to read more. But I see a lot in Algorand of what I see in Constellation, of, instead of trying to just build something that was slightly better than the existing model, or could capitalize on some of these less value add Web3 use cases, you're building a platform for the future.
Yeah, and this wallet integration with MasterCard is going to be a game changer. I mean, because all the transactions are going to be settled on Algorand. So you're going to be making payments in USD, but the transaction itself is settled on Algorand, and that's huge. I mean, and the fact that they're using Algorand and not another chain again, is pretty significant. And MasterCard themselves. So I think this initiative is going to go out in Australia first. But even Australia, has probably has got to be generating hundreds of thousands of transactions every single day. I mean, because you're talking about every merchant that uses MasterCard potentially, right? So the number itself, even on Australia, can be potentially pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, and this has to be better for the merchants, right? Like if you think about Visa and MasterCard and American Express, and they're kind of really charging, exorbitant is maybe a little strong, but they're charging high fees for merchants. Every time you swipe your credit card, at a store, like understand that about 2% of that transaction cost is going right into the pockets of Visa, MasterCard, Amex, whoever it is. And I think the reason you're seeing MasterCard and Visa, I haven't seen much from Amex, but I assume they are starting to embrace blockchain technology, because I believe if they don't, and they don't lower their cost of infrastructure, their margins are going to go down, and they know that somebody else is going to eat their lunch. But so it just shows you that what gets me most excited about distributed ledger technology is that like rent seeking, it gets minimized because it becomes transparent, right? And it becomes one of those things that like some of the walls created over the last 50 to 70 years and things like finance, those moats are going to be broken down by this great technology. So I'm not advocating against Visa or MasterCard or Amex. What I'm saying is they have to evolve with the future. And it's a future where more of the money goes to the vendor or stays in the pocket of the customer and a little bit less goes to them. Now, the upside for them is if you have more money in your pocket, you can buy more things. That's more transactions, right? And so it's not necessarily that there's a loser in this, but I certainly think the individual consumer and the entrepreneur that's just trying to run a business is a winner in this. And you can see they're embracing it. And it's awesome that they chose Algorand for this initiative.
So here's the tweet from the wallet, talking about this. So, they would create emissions through the wallet, and, funds are getting created. So everything here is done, on chain, on Algorand. And that's huge. And here's the presentation that was given, talking about this partnership. I believe that there's a video. I don't have this pulled up, but there's a video talking about this, and like that's a big deal. That's
really cool. I wonder if anyone in the Algorand community can let me know, because I just don't know this. I wonder if there's a way to reverse the transaction, right? Because like that's like one of the benefits and why people are willing to accept those fees on a credit card as a vendor or as like a customer. Is like the credit card companies will like protect the individual consumer, right? Somewhat on a fraudulent transaction, and the vendor as well, if like a customer doesn't pay. Like, so it's kind of interesting. I'm curious to like dig into that more. And is this a use case where MasterCard is saying we're going to trial not being able to do that? Or is this something where, the pair wallet and Algorand have kind of come up with a way to kind of solve that problem, which is, potentially a sticking point of distributed ledger technologies, or at least public blockchains. And that's why they're so sought after by like scammers, right? Because if you send somebody your Ethereum, it's gone forever. Like you can't reverse that transaction. So I'll be curious to see how they approach that and what their solution for that problem is.
I mean, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on to see, how that all develops. I think during the last space that Algorand had with the Constellation team, where they were talking about the DREC, I think someone was potentially talking about somebody working on reversing transactions. I mean, I know that that's a thing. I know that several people are kind of mucking around with that possibility, but I mean, you don't know.
No, there's clearly going to have to be some problems to mass adoption of distributed ledger technology. That's one of them in theory. Other ones are better user interfaces, right? Like, is the solution people just don't even, know that they're kind of digital wallets signing into things. They just load a website and it's signed in for them. Like, we've talked about this, and I think when we jumped on the Algorand space, I was talking about that, right? Like the user interface is certainly something that I think most people involved in crypto distributed ledger technology today are very much like excited about the technology, the early adopters, but to get the next, to get another 7 billion people globally to kind of adopt this technology, what you really need is to make it seamless, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in and answer some of these questions. So the Constellation will never let the community run nodes. Okay, well, that's fake news because we both have a node. So we're both community members. That's actually a thing. And anybody with collateral, let me see if I can go up to the, I think it's—
anybody can get on the wait list, right? We know that.
Yeah, anybody can get on the wait list to run a validator.
And while you're trying to find it, I would just point out, like, a whole part of the Delegator platform and the elastic supply that Constellation just announced is about having the funds and the resources to really have the capital and create the platform they need to grow activity of the network, which will then demand more nodes, right? And so, and then on top of that, like, really, even if you're on the wait list and you're like, man, I got a poor draw on the Constellation wait list when it initiated, right? I think I was like in the top 10% of the highest numbers. I don't think I was the last, but I just got a bad draw. Like, that's how it was at that time. But what I would say is, like, now with delegation, like, you can participate and earn rewards while you wait for the network to need enough nodes for your spot on the wait list. And so,
right. Like, I mean, you could go to Lattice, and this is essentially going to be the portal for all of this stuff. Like the delegators, the future delegators coming. So, here's your DTM, which is a node. Here's testnet, which you can run a node on testnet. This is here's the Door metagraph. So if you wanted to run a node within a metagraph, so the only public network that's actually running right now is the Door Technologies metagraph. And remember, each one of these metagraphs are layer 1 networks. And within that layer 1 network, like every layer 1 network, Algorand is a layer 1 network. All these layer 1 networks have nodes themselves. So if you had collateral to be a Door node operator, you could come to the Lattice portal, stake your Door. The collateral to run a node on Door is 1 million Door. So if you have the collateral, you can do that right now. Anybody. It's open for literally anybody. And then over here, you can see the node operators. So if you have the collateral, you can join the wait list. Just stake your DAG here. And then when spots open up on mainnet, what they'll do is they'll pull from integration net. So I think they're in the process of onboarding, I think, about 100 nodes from integration net to mainnet. And then what that's going to do is free up spots for people that want to join and become node operators. Integration net is kind of like the first step to the public mainnet. It's where it's the test bed sort of for these layer 1 networks, and they all need nodes. So that's actually not true. I can absolutely say with certainty, 100% false, that Constellation doesn't allow node operators. That's the biggest
Yeah.
bunch of fake news that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and if they let 30,000 people run nodes, they would lose money, right? And so there has to be a balance, at least initially. And I don't want to speak for Constellation, I don't know their ultimate plans, but what I would imagine is like they get to a point sometime in the future where there's enough metagraphs going that it can kind of become more of a marketplace as opposed to gated. And but to protect the network, to make sure that validator nodes are in the black and breaking even and earning some decent return for spending the time to upgrade your node and make sure it's running properly, like for the good of the network, you have to gate it initially. Like it's actually a pretty common practice we see in Web3.
Right. And the other thing that I see happening, honestly, I've got no knowledge of this. This is just pure speculation, but it makes absolute sense, right? Because you just want sort of frictionless, and you also just want to show like potentially how this could work. So I could definitely see somebody, we have what is it, like 600 people in the hackathon right now.
Mm-hmm.
I could potentially see somebody building some sort of meme network, right? Because remember, again, each one of these metagraphs is a layer 1 blockchain. They're all independent blockchains. And so what you could have is the barrier to entry on this potential meme network be super low, right? The requirements could be like super minimal, like maybe holding 100 tokens or something like that, right? And then just to showcase the true horizontal scalability of the network itself. And so you could potentially onboard millions of nodes, right? All at once. And, getting back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, where, I think this mindset sort of needs to shift and really understand the opportunity here with delegators. I believe, and I've always believed from day one, when I first learned about Constellation Network and what they were doing, that the real value here is going to be in all the businesses they're building on it. And I could potentially see in the not too distant future where you have a blockchain that's built on top of it that could be close to or maybe exceeding the market cap of the entire network itself, right? So when we were talking about Panasonic, so I'm just going to loop that in because that's the biggest enterprise that we know of that's directly working with Constellation. So I think that you're going to have more opportunities like that to stake and be rewarded with metagraphs like that versus running a network validator node. So, I mean, I get that, some people might be frustrated wanting to wait in line. Well, there's opportunities that are coming. This delegator network is going to literally open the door for crazy amounts of possibilities. So like delegated stake, everybody does that. I mean, even Solana, I pointed out a couple of weeks ago in a video showing all these all these huge VC companies that are delegated stakers on Solana. And so that absolutely is going to be a possibility on this network. And you are crazy. You have lost your mind if you don't think there's going to be some wild potential here with delegated staking on networks like Panasonic.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, I don't know the exact number of nodes on Constellation mainnet right now, but let's just say it's like 300, 350. I don't know the exact number. There's probably going to be a couple of those nodes. Maybe it's like a node named Dagnum that a lot of people in the community know. Maybe a bunch of people delegate to that. But I would imagine most of that delegation is going to your point, go to things like Door, go to things like whatever Panasonic builds. That's, I would imagine, like, what can Dagnum give you that Panasonic could? Like, Panasonic could airdrop you NFTs for products. They could create their own Metagraph token. Like, it's hard for an individual validator to compete with that. Maybe initially, but in time, as the network ramps up, that's yeah. So this decentralized, I'll have a comment on this one. Look, I've said this in a numerous, this is my opinion. It does not represent Constellation's opinion or Dagnum's opinion. Centralization, you don't go from 0 to 100. The things, generally speaking, in Web3 that are the most decentralized have the ability to send value and nothing else. Okay, like, what can you do on Bitcoin besides send value? What can you do on, I'm not going to name projects and just get hate. The point would be, if you're working with enterprises and entities like a Panasonic, that you need to be able to assure things, and that does require some gating, especially in the early stages. I mean, like, I'll just use the example. Like, look at Alchemy. Alchemy is about to launch, they call their nodes validators, a validator waitlist in September. And why is that? It's to protect validator returns. Why do they have to do that? They don't want a bunch of validators to drop off the network because it doesn't make economic sense for them to spend the money on their virtual servers anymore and tank their exchange. Like, there are certain requirements you need to have when you're dealing with enterprise customers, which is what Constellation's trying to do, what other Web3 projects that we've covered in the last episode and this episode are trying to do. And so I think, look, if your ethos is pure decentralization, like, yeah, maybe there's some other places that you should go. But if you're excited about how this technology can change the world and can help businesses and create a lot of value, which you can participate in, I think you have to realize that there are some puts and takes there.
Yeah, but I mean, but again, it's actually, it's not really true. So, like, the Door node operator program, there's no wait list. Like, if this guy doesn't want to wait on a wait list, go get Door collateral and be a node operator on the Door metagraph. So right now,
DTM, right?
Yeah, but no, you don't even need that. Like, look, so there's right now there's 13 validators on the Door metagraph. So to be a validator on the Door metagraph requires 1 million Door. That's the requirement. So you don't want to wait on a wait list? Go buy Door tokens and become a validator on the Door network. I mean, there's your solution. If you really wanted to not wait in a queue, there's no queue on the Door metagraph. The next metagraph that is probably going, and I say probably because we actually don't know, everybody's status, but the next metagraph that has officially given a date is Intrana. Now, they haven't said what their requirements are going to be for running a validator on their network, but you don't want to wait for a L0 metagraph node. Well, you've got options, and you've also got delegated staking, and you could actually do both. You could be on the wait list and delegate your DAG at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah. So what is this guy? What dollar value would you speculate?
That's all you, Dagnum. That's all you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, really what it's going to boil down to is, network usage, right? That's really what it's going to, because what we're really going after, the people that want, returns and stuff, it's the snapshot fees. And so you're going to want a lot of high network usage chains. So like Panasonic could potentially be a super duper high network use chain. If you compared so Door, let me see if I can actually pull them up, because that's really the only one that we can actually look at right now. I mean, because we would just be speculating because we actually don't have any idea, right, what a Panasonic thing would look like. But I think when I calculated out this Door metagraph, so currently, if the amount of snapshots that they do a month is actually pretty similar to the amount of snapshots. I'm gonna compare a little bit here for a second. Just bear with me. Now I've got to sign in. I'm logging into the Älvkemi thing, so I've got to sign in with my wallet. That's what it's asking me to do. So before I log in, so you guys can see this action required. So I'm actually signing in. And so this, I think, is important too, because moving forward, like, I think that this is going to be a standard. I think you're going to see lots of people do exactly what I just showed you live right there. So I'm using my wallet to sign in to a website. That's essentially what just happened. Now let me go to the Explorer here, and so we'll switch it. So so on Älvkemi's Explorer, they're focused on transactions, right? And so the metagraphs themselves, you're going to have transactions within that network. And what snapshots are just like bundled up transactions. And they're going to take all the underlying metadata from these snapshots, whatever network it is. Like with ads, it's you're validating that the bid went through, and then on the Door metagraph, switching back to the Door metagraph, you're validating foot traffic. But so the reason why I'm bringing up Älvkemi to show you is because, so like right now they're doing about 2 million or like 1.8, 1.9. I think that's what they're averaging per day transactions. But when you switch it to snapshots here, you can see that it's a different number, right? So it's about like 20,000 snapshots ish, like a day. And that's actually what's I counted it out just because I wanted to do the math just to see about how much it would cost. And that's actually what's happening right now on the Door metagraph. So the Door metagraph is doing a similar amounts of snapshots per month as the Älvkemi, but you just have to switch it over, because on Constellation's network it's snapshots, it's not transactions. So the snapshots are what generates the fees to the network. So what you would need is a metagraph that's doing a crazy amount of data and submitting tons of snapshots. I think the last time when Chris and I were talking about Panasonic, it was, potentially, we're talking about millions of snapshots a month, which could generate tons of fees for the network.
Yeah, it really
and
just
that,
depends how they want
yeah,
to use it, right? And so
yeah,
like, it's hard for us to sit here and be like, it's going to be X, because we don't know exactly what they're going to come out with. And then maybe they come out with something, and then 6 months later they're doing 10 times the activity because they roll it out to more areas of their kind of company. And so it's hard for us to kind of, I always prefer to give people the tools to make their own estimates, right? I feel like that's the healthier way to do things, than to somebody to kind of speculate and throw a number out there. Even if you're using logic to get to that number, it's everyone is making assumptions, right? And so I think what's important to talk about is, we know what's going to drive value to the Constellation ecosystem. It's snapshots. We know that the companies, really focused on getting out as many metagraphs and high quality metagraphs as they can, and that they've literally changed the tokenomics because they think it's a more powerful platform to do that. But it also lets you kind of participate, as a delegator, during that kind of take up phase. So that's a tough question to answer. I don't feel comfortable throwing a number out there, but what I would say too is, like, I would assume before 2028, as we're seeing more metagraphs, we see what comes out of the hackathon. We see more things going from integration and testing into the main net and Constellation. We're going to probably get a better idea of the trajectory of network usage, of the types of applications or layer ones built on Constellation or metagraphs, and how much they use. And so your ability to forecast that in probably a few years is a lot better than today.
yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, you just don't know, but it's all on here. Like, if you wanted to just tool around this, I'm on Constellation's website right now, and so right here you have the tools and resources, and then there's the Metanomics light paper, which goes over the fee structure that we were talking about. And the modeling here, clearly shows where things are going, and all it's going to take is just more and more of these metagraphs coming online. And I mean, you could have a metagraph launch tomorrow. I mean, we don't know. We don't know actually the state of everybody who's developing. I mean, outside of the hackathon. So like right now, there's the hackathon with something like 600 participants. You could potentially have all 600 of those people decide, hey, we love Constellation and we want to to build, because anybody can build on this network. It's totally open. Just the hackathon is just to help get out and promote the adoption of the public chain. And we're incentivizing people through this hackathon to get out there and build some cool shit, right? So you got $100,000 of prizes that are up for grabs, and the partners of this hackathon are IBM and Panasonic. I mean, those two people wouldn't partner with a company if they didn't believe that there was long-term sustainable growth, right?
And we've seen Stardust give out grants to good ideas. Like Entrana, I think, received a Stardust grant, right? So there's Stardust Collective trying to promote the network and make sure the network grows. We have capital to kind of award people to kind of help that development move along. And so, I think Entrana is one of those entities that did receive a grant, and they're now appearing to be next in line for the next Metagraph to go live. And so maybe the hackathon is a more formal construct for people to win capital and notoriety for their ideas, but there's also other ways. And so I encourage anyone. I don't have any programming ability, but if you do and you have an idea, there's a lot of resources Constellation has of sample metagraph, sample code, and then platforms like the hackathon to kind of showcase your skill and maybe get the resources you need to kind of drive your idea forward and get it closer to becoming a reality on this platform.
Yeah, and there's the other company, Sentiment. They're building, and they're also in the hackathon. And I've talked about them several times, and I could see actually large companies utilize what they're doing. So they're essentially giving people a way to give like real feedback. And so I could see large businesses like Panasonic, IBM, Microsoft, incorporating that tooling, that system that provides honest, real feedback from people. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of opportunities. I mean, Intrana itself, I think is going to be a huge driving factor for the network, just because of all the people that they're working with. It goes back to the to the beginning of the topic here. Like you're investing in these people, right? You're investing in the team, and once you start peeling back the layers of the onion of who all is involved, especially with Intrana. I mean, so Intrana sits on, for those of you who are just coming in, let me see if I can pull up. I've talked about this thing like tons and tons and tons of times, but it's great. I mean, it's the National DigiFoundry, right? So if you wanted a window into actually what's happening on Constellation's network, just head over to the National DigiFoundry. The National DigiFoundry itself is a metagraph on Constellation's network. They're a DAO. And if anybody actually doubts this, which I don't even know why you would doubt this, you can actually go over. You can go over to the Explorer right here. So this is mainnet, and the National DigiFoundry is actually on Integration Net right now. So this is like the bullpen, if you will, to the public mainnet. But it's running. It's online, and people can see all of these transactions that are happening. And then boom, what is this? This is NDT. So this is NDT. Going back over to this tab is the token for the National DigiFoundry. So everybody in the National DigiFoundry, U.S. Treasury Department, National Science Foundation, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, NASA, Space Force, every single one of these people is holding a Stargazer wallet, and they all have the National DigiFoundry tokens, the NDT tokens on it. So if you wanted to get a window and an insight on what's happening on Constellation's ecosystem, just head over to National DigiFoundry, because any one of these companies is potentially going to come on to mainnet. I mean, it's just a matter of time. And Intrana themselves, getting back to Intrana and what they're doing and why you should be paying attention. Well, Intrana is the chair of this financial product tokenization working group, which the United States Treasury Department is sitting on. And look, here's this address right here. This isn't a Bitcoin address. This isn't a Ethereum address. It's not an Avalanche address. It's not a Solana address. This is a Constellation DAG address, because all metagraphs are built with the metagraph token standard, which is DAG's L0 standard. So it's kind of like ERC20, where all these shit tokens are minted on. You could do that, but with real utility, utilizing the DAG standard. So here is the token address for this financial product tokenization working group within the National DigiFoundry, which Intrana is they're the head of this working group. And this actually was set up as a mandate by the president, looking for a way to integrate digital assets. So, things are happening. They just might not be happening at a pace that a lot of the degens are comfortable with. But, just going back to, to Algorand for a second, there's a reason why all of this stuff is taking off now. And it's because you have this real world adoption. And I don't think it's a coincidence why you're seeing the growth of tokenized assets, real world assets, overtook DeFi. And it's going to continue going that way.
Yeah, and I feel like we've hammered it home, and I think we'll get to see and learn more about Entrana when that's kind of unveiled and they launch, and we've got to look forward to see what Panasonic's doing, and what's going to come out of the kind of hackathon, and that's just the kind of near-term excitement. But to your point, the more medium term, with all of these entities, enterprises and government bodies having access to the network, playing around with it, testing it, it's going to be really exciting to see what metagraphs and platforms come out of that, right?
Yeah, and getting back, rounding out again, Algorand here. I mean, there is real world adoption happening right now on the chain. And I mean, there's tons of different real world use cases that are live running right now. And it's why, I pointed out the other day why you're seeing the TVL go up. It's because people are actually starting to notice this. Utility is actually winning. Not that there's anything wrong with meme tokens and, all these casino style stuff, but it's the real world adoption is what's really going to make everything go parabolic, because there will be a day when most of the things that we do in our daily lives are going to be running on chain. And the reason why they'll be running on chain, most people won't even be aware that they're running on chain, is because of the added security layer. You need to be able to secure your network. You're going to need to be able to secure your identity. I mean, we started off the beginning of this space talking about how potentially everybody in America had their identity leaked through that data breach. So everybody's social security number is probably vulnerable right now.
Yeah, I mean, like you showed logging onto the Alchemy website, click here to connect, right? Yeah. It's probably gonna be a lot more seamless in a few years, but it'll be tap to connect, and that'll be that. And people won't be thinking about it, but it'll be distributed ledger technology underneath, right? That's providing that safety, that verifiability, the immutability, the auditability that we need in our digital future. Yeah, I feel like we probably touched on everything we wanted to say, and I think it'll be fun to kind of talk about some of the stuff we alluded to at the end here with Constellation, in the future, as that kind of comes out. And when in the future, I mean, this year we've got the hackathon ongoing. We're going to have high def. We're going to find out what Panasonic's up to. Hopefully we'll be having a space just on Entrana and all the cool stuff they're doing. So, but really, and to your point, and over a more medium term time horizon, there's a lot of big potential players kicking around the technology now in Constellation, and the National DigiFoundry is an awesome vessel for adoption for this network.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And to sort of close it out here, I mean, yeah, so we're talking about, we've got people have 7 days left to submit their proposals to the hackathon, and then it closes. So after this 7 days, that's when they're going to sort of look at stuff and maybe start to vote. But I think after next week, probably before October, we could potentially start to see some announcements about some of the projects that have been building in the hackathon. So we have currently, as of today, we have 651 participants. And I mean, you could potentially, at the end of the day, you could realistically have every single one of these people potentially launching a metagraph, because like what we pointed out a couple of weeks ago through the delegators, you can actually almost launch your network for free on this network. You just get people to sort of crowdfund, if you will, and they put up the network resources for you. So if you're a developer, why wouldn't you want to utilize that? You can have the whole thing funded for almost nothing. And then not only that, but better than getting your whole idea funded by sort of crowdsourcing, you get rewarded because you're a validator on your own network. So you start earning ROI right from day one. So why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, and as a DAG holder, you kind of are the VC, right? Yeah. You're the venture capital investor deciding where you want to delegate. And if you delegate wisely, you could get some major rewards, right? Like maybe it's L1 tokens, maybe it's free product. We don't know. But it's a really powerful platform, and there's a lot of really cool innovation and potential that'll come up.
Right. Yeah. And quickly, I'm just going to leave off here a potential here. I think this is a good way to end it. But one of the things is the DEX, right? So we haven't talked a lot about the DEX, but there'll be an L0 DEX. And so I think that's where you're going to have a lot of this bartering going on, right? And so you're going to have metagraphs trying to incentivize DAG holders for your DAG, right? Because, that's where it's going to be about. So you want to reward people. You want people's DAG. And that's all going to be, happening here pretty soon. I think that they've talked about, I don't know the date, but I know that they've said a target that this L0 DEX is going to go live this year. So it could be, it could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be in October, November, but the L0 DEX is happening, and it'll go live this year. That's the goal, and it's going to be pretty exciting, I think, when that DEX goes live. And then the delegated staking stuff is going to happen early next year. So good times all around.
Thank you for anyone that survived the entire 2-hour stream. Hats off to you listening to us for that long. You deserve some alpaca.
Yeah. And so this is all going to be viewable later on X, well, actually immediately on X and YouTube. So just feel free to drop a comment. I'll be keeping an eye on the comments, and hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. And till then, take it easy.
Bye, everyone. Take care.